For many months, the BBC has been embroiled in a controversy. One in which it has been refusing to air a documentary that took on a life of its own inside the organization. Journalists there have been demanding to know what happened to an investigation the BBC had commissioned into Israel's war on medical professionals and the entire medical community inside of Gaza. That controversy has now resulted in the documentary being acquired by Mehdi Hasan and ZDO News for its worldwide distribution, and by Channel 4 for its distribution inside the UK. So, Mehdi is joining us now to talk about this documentary and the process that led to it being censored. And now, finally, being released last night. Mehdi, thanks so much for joining us. Mehdi Hasan, thanks for having me. Host, and I wanted to start just by honoring several of the medical professionals who have been killed in this genocide. Let's look at this image. Dropsite posted this yesterday. It's a picture from a graduation ceremony at the Faculty of Medicine in Gaza. 4 of the people you're looking at in this photo have been killed. Dr. Omar Farwana, who was the Dean of the Faculty of Medicine. Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, who was the head of orthopedic surgery at Al-Shifa Medical Complex. Dr. Rafat Lubad, who was the head of internal medicine at Al-Shifa. And then just this week, we learned of the killing of Dr. Marwan Al-Sultan, who was the director of the Indonesian hospital and a cardiologist. So in that single photo, 4 of them have been assassinated. Several were targeted at their homes, not as collateral damage from attacks on fighters or caught in crossfire. But, Mehdi, I want you to talk about the targeting of medical professionals. Because that is what I think people don't understand. It's a reality so grim it sounds unbelievable when spoken aloud. Mehdi Hasan, it sounds insane to say it out loud. Over the last 22 months, I think there are 3 things we've normalized that should sound insane. 1. Obviously, is the deliberate killing of journalists, which a lot of journalists in the West have a great deal of trouble comprehending. The other is the deliberate killing of children, gunshot wounds to the head. Sniper shots. Not collateral damage. And of course, the third is the doctors, the killing of doctors, nurses, and paramedics, and the deliberate targeting and destruction of Gaza's healthcare system. That is the premise, the very basis of this film. It was produced by award-winning filmmakers at Basement Films in the UK. It was made over several months, went through rigorous checks, and for much of its production, it went through the BBC's own editorial process, including right of reply. It features the fantastic lead reporter Ramita Navai, an award-winning war correspondent. Together, they put together this hour-long film based on eyewitness testimony from Palestinian doctors and survivors, as well as Dr. Adnan Al-Bursh, who you just mentioned. He's in this film, but he has since been killed in Israeli captivity, tortured and killed in prison. As one of his colleagues says, so you have eyewitness testimony from Palestinian doctors about what they have had to endure. We also have an Israeli medic whistleblower in the film who served at SDET-Man, the Israeli Gulag, the black site where they have taken Palestinian detainees to be tortured, raped, and killed. It's all there, put together in the film. You mentioned the targeting of doctors and how jarring it is to say it out loud. Perhaps the most powerful moment for me in the film, and I would urge Breaking Point's viewers to go to the ZDO Twitter or Blue Sky feed to see a clip we posted. It features Dr. Khaled Hamouda, a surgeon from Gaza who is now in Egypt. He was bombed in his home with his family, a family of other doctors. At first, 10 people were killed. He, his wife, and his child then fled. But as they went down the street, and by the way, his house was blown up. Not the entire street. Just his house. A drone followed them and attacked them again. He woke up in a hospital and saw a nurse carrying his child. His daughter, who was dead. The next morning, he was told that his wife, the mother of his child, was also dead. He's one of the only survivors from that massacre. The reporter, Ramita Navai, asks, "You were targeted?" He says, "Yes. The drone came and targeted us." This is the same pattern we heard from the World Central Kitchen workers when they were in a humanitarian convoy and were targeted. Car by car by car. This is what we've heard from journalists. And this is what we have to get our heads around. The United States of America has been arming and funding a country that is systematically, and that is the key word here, destroying the Gaza healthcare system. Its doctors. And its medics. The key point, which comes out in the film, is this: you can rebuild hospitals in the years to come. Trump can turn Gaza into the Riviera of the Middle East and build as many hospitals as he likes. But you cannot rebuild that knowledge base. You cannot rebuild that human infrastructure. You cannot just get those doctors back. Gazan society spent years educating itself in this way. And the Israelis have deliberately targeted it. Host, let's take a look at the trailer to get a sample of what people can expect from the film. Trailer plays. They shoot at us on the floor. Israel has been killing the very people trying to keep the healthcare system alive, its doctors and medics. Despite hospitals and healthcare workers being protected under international law. As Israel has bombed Gaza, hundreds of Palestinian doctors and medics have refused to leave their hospitals. We are in the theater. In the operating room. Full darkness. No water. No electricity. But we have hero surgeons in Gaza. Hundreds of medics have been killed. Hundreds have been detained. Many of them have been forcibly disappeared. Our Palestinian team on the ground have gathered testimony from health workers and their families. And Israeli whistleblowers have told us they witnessed Palestinian prisoners being tortured and that some Israeli medics are complicit. I don't even think that in Israeli society there is a need for a cover-up these days. You can do almost whatever you want when it comes to Gazans. Trailer ends. Host, well, one of the things people can see, Mehdi, is that this is a high production value film. And the BBC funded this film. The BBC then refused to air it, giving what a source told The Independent were __ reasons. Man. You probably have a lot of insight into this process. Why did the BBC, which had recently aired the Louis Theroux documentary, end up getting rid of a film that they funded? What's your understanding of what happened? Mehdi Hasan, the BBC put out a very long statement. A disingenuous statement. I would argue. Their argument was that they had this other documentary they aired on Gaza which became super controversial for unnecessary reasons. I would say it was narrated by a child in Gaza surviving the war. And it turned out the child was the son of a deputy agriculture minister in the Gaza government. Some technocrat who was then, of course, labeled as Hamas. There was a huge fury in the UK that the BBC had aired a film from the child of a Hamas minister. Even though it was a well-sourced, well-made, high-production value film. And the child had obviously not decided the editorial agenda. While they were, quote, investigating how that happened, they decided to park this film. Which As you say, they had spent a lot of money and many months on with Basement Films, a company we at ZDO know well because they made a film for us last year called Israel's Real Extremism. The fundamental argument from the BBC was that Basement Films went public and talked about the process while the BBC was still trying to get everything approved. Of course, Basement was frustrated. My friend Ben DePere, the executive producer and a former head of Channel 4 News, a very respected, award-winning journalist, went public at the Sheffield Documentary Festival and said, "This is ridiculous. We've got doctors in this film waiting for it to come out. We're showing disrespect to people who risked their lives to talk to us sources. Whistleblowers. Survivors of massacres." The BBC then put out a statement saying that if they aired it now, there would be a perception of partiality. And the BBC can't have that. The great irony, of course, is that their decision not to air this film, a film they commissioned, that ran through their own checks, is the greatest perception of partiality. It's partiality towards Israel. This is a BBC that has been cowed, intimidated, pressured, and bullied. I used to work at the BBC, and I used to defend it from right-wing attacks. But I have never in my entire lifetime, and I'm about to turn 46, seen it take a beating like this. I have never had such a depressing, disappointing view of the national broadcaster in the UK as I have since October 2023. I know many people who have stopped watching or appearing on the BBC because their coverage has been so shameful. There was a study by the Center for Media Monitoring recently which found they give 33 times as much coverage per Israeli casualty as they do per Palestinian casualty. So there isn't a perception of partiality. There is well-documented evidence of partiality towards Israel. Host, I want to linger on that point and connect it to the original controversy that put this documentary on ice. Try to imagine a world in which a documentary was made about the difficulties faced by Israeli children in this war, which are non-trivial. Even having to run to a bomb shelter is a traumatizing experience for a child. So let's say the BBC commissioned that documentary. And then it turned out the boy's father worked for the Ministry of Agriculture in Israel. Imagine them pulling the documentary, apologizing, and launching an investigation into how they could have possibly aired the thoughts of a child whose father works for the Israeli government. That, to me, tells you everything you need to know about how the BBC approached this. So, how difficult was it to pry this out of the BBC? Or were they like, "Thank you, Mehdi. We are so glad to be done with this controversy"? Mehdi Hasan, the heavy lifting was done by Ben DePere at Basement Films, who put his sweat and blood into this film. He spent a long time in back and forths with the BBC. And it's very risky for him, running an independent production company, to pick a fight with one of the biggest broadcasters in the world. So, props to my friend Ben for believing in this film and saying, "I want it out there. It doesn't matter if I screw up my relationships or lose money on this." Eventually, the BBC did release it. Partly because of Ben's cajoling and partly because I think they just wanted to be done with it. The moment it became available, I was messaging them, saying, "We want to platform this. This is what ZDO was created for, to give these voices to the world. We know, you and I, that the right has been complaining about cancel culture for decades. And yet the single biggest victims of cancel culture are Palestinians, supporters of the Palestinian movement, and journalism and academia about Palestine." One thing I took great pride in was that after we acquired the film and the BBC put out a statement saying it's not their film anymore. Which is true, made a few changes. One of them was we took out all references to the Hamas-run health ministry. We call it the Gaza Ministry of Health in our version. Because that other phrase is itself propagandistic and loaded. Designed to let people cast doubt on the deaths and suffering. We have eyewitness accounts in this film from people who have nothing to do with Hamas. Just one quick story that your viewers might find interesting. I'm told that at the start of this conflict, a production company went to a major American broadcaster with a story about a Palestinian family. Just following their suffering and the number of family members who had been killed. The American broadcaster said, "We'll run it. But first, let us go and find an Israeli family so we can balance it. And we'll run both stories." A few weeks later, they came back to the production company and said, "Well, we can't find an Israeli family that has suffered like the Palestinian family you showed us. Therefore, we're not running your story." They just dropped the whole thing. This is what happens. Palestinian voices are silenced. Host, Emily. The other interesting thing about the BBC's position here is they're not disputing any facts in the film or any of the journalism. Right. Mehdi. They aren't saying it didn't meet their editorial standards. Mehdi Hasan, not at all. They're hiding behind this flimsy phrase. Perception of partiality. So it's not even that they are saying the film itself is biased. They're saying if we run it now, people will say that we are biased. And we are scared of those people being the pro-Israel lobby, and therefore, we're not going to put it out. Look. The people who've made this film have won Oscars and Emmys. The reporter, Ramita Navai, has made films all about Iran's human rights abuses. The credibility of these people cannot be questioned. Though I'm sure it will be by bad faith actors. And yet, this is where we've reached. In the name of protecting Israel, wittingly or unwittingly, we have burned down international law and we have burned down journalistic credibility. Host, so Mehdi. Where can people go to find this? Mehdi Hasan, they can go to Gaza. Film. That's the website we set up specifically for this documentary Zensored.com. It is available to our paid subscribers for now. And I know people will ask, why not put it out for free to the world? Well, because the people behind this film spent a lot of time and money making it. I just want to remind everyone that a free press isn't free. High-quality journalism requires investment. If you really want documentaries that are going to win awards, report from the ground, and break stories, then we have to support that work financially. I'm proud that Zensored is financially supporting this film. Documentaries cost a lot of money, as you know. And so we are airing it to our paid subscribers. I urge people to become one. For less than the cost of a movie ticket, you can watch a film that is more important than any other you're going to see this year. Host, it is true. Journalism is expensive. And documentaries are particularly so. The travel, the sophistication, the legal fees. It's immense. Well, Mehdi, thank you so much for joining us. And congratulations on this acquisition. I'm so glad that it's finally getting out there. In a world filled with noise and misinformation, the bravest act can be to simply bear witness and tell the truth. This film is more than just a news report. It is a historical document. A testament to the courage of those on the ground who risked everything to share their stories. And to the journalists who refused to let them be silenced. By bringing this story to light, we defy the forces that seek to control the narrative and erase human suffering. We affirm that every life has value and every voice deserves to be heard. This is the very heart of why independent media exists. If you believe in the power of fearless journalism to hold the powerful accountable and to illuminate the darkest corners of our world, then we ask you to support our mission. Hey! If you liked that video, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people. And if you'd like to get the full show, ad-free, and in your inbox every morning, please become a part of our community by subscribing at Breaking Points.com. Thank you for helping us support the future of independent media.